Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday for the first ever Alousi Scholars virtual event. My name is Michaela, and I'm your host for today's event. I'm the one you've been seeing so many emails from. I proudly work for the Center for Arab American Philanthropy, where I lead our youth leadership and engagement work. I am truly honored to have the pleasure of welcoming this incredible group of STEM leaders from across the country. Before we continue, I would like to first go over a few housekeeping items. First, CAAP is committed to upholding a space that is free of racism, transphobia, homophobia, Islamophobia, ableism, misogyny, classism, or other biases. It is our expectation that all audience members will abide by these ethics. As usual, by default, your microphones are muted during speakers and videos to reduce background noise. It seems like people are starting to use the chat already, but yeah, in the meantime, definitely use the chat box to post reactions, comments, or questions to the group. Lastly, just so you guys know, this event is being recorded so we can share it to scholars who were unable to attend. So if you don't feel comfortable with being recorded, you're welcome to turn your camera off, but just note that the breakout rooms will not be recorded at all. So here with us today, we have our 2020-2021 Alousi cohort, alumni, as well as committee members and supporters of the fund. I can't continue without acknowledging that I know there's been so many challenges, uncertainty, and hardship that we've all been facing for more than a year now. But if there's one thing I'm grateful for is that we become more accustomed to virtually communicating, and I'm just really happy that we're able to come together across states and across time zones for this event. So we hope that you are excited as we are, and we look forward to continuing to build this strong connection and this sisterhood of women in the STEM field. So with that, please join me in congratulating our current and former scholars. You are truly inspiring. Individually, your experiences here are all unique, but together you share a common bond as powerful Arab and Muslim women leaders in STEM. You are the epitome of excellence, and we are so lucky to witness you continue to make breakthroughs in the field, shatter the glass ceiling, and empower the next generation of women leaders. Again, congratulations. Lastly, I also want to give a shout out and thank all the committee members, supporters, and staff here on this call who make this scholarship program possible. To tell you a little bit about what to expect for today, first we'll be learning a little bit more about CAAP and the legacy of Dr. Adawia Alousi. Then we'll get a chance to see a special Alousi Scholars video that we put together, hear from our special guest speaker, and lastly, conclude the event with time for you all to split into the breakout rooms. So as mentioned, we're going to be kicking it off by showing you a video to give you a little bit more insight about the work we do at the Center for Arab American Philanthropy.
CAAP, the Center for Arab American Philanthropy, is the only Arab American community foundation in the United States. The power of the model of the community foundation and what it represents in terms of providing leadership for the aspirations of Arab Americans through philanthropy is what mostly make it extremely unique in my eyes.
I think what CAAP does is it brings us together because the Arab American community really is diverse. And so it's really wonderful to see leadership bring us together under one umbrella and one cause.
The Center for Arab American Philanthropy serves donors by giving them tools that allow them to practice their philanthropy in the most strategic and impactful way.
I choose to give because it really helps me and my family think strategically of, how do we want to build up an account value? How do we do that over a period of time? It really helps us step back and think strategically of, Where's that one place based on who we are that we want to have the biggest impact?
CAAP inspires me to give by making it easy, giving me peace of mind, organizing my budget early on, so I know once this amount is put aside for philanthropy, for nonprofit, for whatever I want to give.
I think that these young generations that are doing TGI, that are doing the grant making, I think as they move forward, it's gonna just put that culture in them that we should be looking out for our community and we should be doing it together.
I didn't know that kids my age can really bring about change. I've learned to be able to kind of organize different fundraising events. It's also taught me about what it really means to be a philanthropist and have joy in giving back.
The Center for Arab American Philanthropy improves communities by making grants to nonprofit organizations that serve those communities.
The Linda Sioux Fund for Ovarian Cancer Awareness and Research was founded in November of 2011. Ovarian is a disease that is not widely known, and clearly having opportunities to bring that awareness to the forefront is critical. CAAP is an amazing organization to begin with, and I think for our organization to advance as quickly as it has without CAAP would have virtually been impossible. The grant received from CAAP really fulfilled one of our key missions as an organization, that is to work on developing a grant to detect ovarian cancer at its earliest stages.
We started being a group of volunteers filled with passion, and then when we wanted ELIF Institute to grow, we didn't know how to start. Every one of our staff positions were created thanks to grants from CAAP. I think because of CAAP, the community that we serve have a brighter future because we show the beauty of our heritage to the Atlanta community.
So Yella is the only college preparatory program in California that uses soccer as a hook to motivate refugee and immigrant kids to go to college and rebuild their lives. The support from CAAP came at a really convenient moment. It was the time where we were at the moment that we wanted to start a college-bound program, and we applied for a small grant from them, which was really the seed money for our program. It was really pivotal for us, and since that time we have had 97% of our kids get accepted to four-year schools.
Together, you can make a much larger impact. So CAAP's mantra, give smart, give together, comes to practice every day when somebody in the community practice that vision and that mission of what CAAP brings to the table.
We're starting to be smart about our giving and put it under an umbrella that can speak for us.
Philanthropy is a power. Philanthropy makes a difference. When you believe in a mission, when you believe in an organization, you have to support it.
Do I say that because of CAAP, the future is brighter for the communities we serve? Of course. It's what we are all about. It's what CAAP is all about.
I hope that video helped you learn a little bit more about what CAAP's all about. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Amin Elusi, who is the professor of medicine in the Department of Stem Cell Transplantation and Cellular Therapy at the University of Texas MD Anderson Center. Amin is the fund advisor and nephew of Dr. Adawia Alousi. I also want to shout out that it's Amin's birthday today, so happy birthday and thank you so much for joining us. He's going to be telling us more about the life and legacy of Dr. Alousi. So Amin, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Michaela, and thank you to Michaela, Katie, Maha, and the whole CAAP organization for putting this wonderful first symposium together and for doing such a wonderful job managing this scholarship. We really are indebted to your hard work and efforts. I can think of no better way to celebrate my birthday than to present to the Alousi Scholars and former alumni who the legacy is that their scholarship is named after. And so on behalf of my family, her nieces and nephews and their children, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Adawia Alousi. Rahmat Allah Aleha. Allah have mercy on her. There we go. Dr. Adawia Amina Elusi was born in Baghdad, Iraq in 1931 into a tight-knit family who valued education. She was the youngest girl in a family of 7 children, which included 3 sisters and 3 brothers. Her father, Amin Elusi, who I'm named after, was a hydraulic engineer, not by education, but by trade, and insisted that each child, regardless of sex, receive a college education. In fact, prior to his death, he left explicit instructions to his oldest male son, Adawia's brother Majid and my father, that he ensured that each of his youngest siblings attend and graduate from college, preferably before marrying, and this request was honored. Adawia gravitated towards science and graduated from University of Baghdad with a degree in pharmacology. Here we see the gates of the University of Baghdad, which she and her siblings, majority of her siblings attended. And from there, this opened the door for further education. In fact, in 1958, Adawia's brother, Majid, my father, was at Harvard Medical School on a scholarship on behalf of the United Nations. And in respecting his late father's wishes, he arranged and supported Adawia to come for advanced studies in the United States. She graduated with a master's degree from the University of Michigan in 1959, and then entered a PhD program at the State University of New York. And upon graduation from SUNY, she did a postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard Medical School. And upon graduation, she took a job with the pharmaceutical company Sterling Winthrop Research Institute, which was located outside of Albany, New York, and not very far from where she did her PhD work at SUNY. Upon graduation, Sterling Winthrop was a rather small pharmaceutical company that had a mission for developing cardiac drugs. In fact, a class of cardiac drugs referred to as inotropes. And this is where Adawia joined a lab, and the molecular cardiology unit at Sterling Winthrop. I just want to take a moment to put everything in context. So Sterling Winthrop was created in the late 1930s, and here we see a picture of their board. And I want you to look around the table and not like other pharmaceutical companies at the time, notice who's at the table. Obviously, all men, and really no one who looks like this, a woman and a foreign-born woman. Within the span of a short time, Adawia joined the cardiac research group, and within 10 years, her work was paving the way for creation of a whole new class of drugs. In fact, within 10 years, she was the senior author on pivotal work in such prestigious journals as the procurement of the National Academy of Science, Circulation, and as shown here, the New England Journal of Medicine. I want you to take a close look, and so those who aren't familiar with medical journals, first author is usually a junior member. The senior author is the last author on the paper. And here we see, I want you to take a close look who's listed on here. Those who know anything about medicine, we have here Eugene Bronwald, who is considered the father of cardiology. In fact, the textbook of cardiology is named after him. And here you have, within 10 years of graduation from a PhD program, a senior author, a woman, a foreign-born woman, represented here in one of the most prestigious journals. And this really was a woman who was ahead of her time. Now, these things didn't happen by coincidence. Not uncommonly during this era, women's research wouldn't be recognized, or other people would take credit for it. And my aunt, Adawia, was very vocal and spoken that she be recognized for her work. And she was sophisticated in it, and she was indeed recognized. And she was recognized because her work was so incredible. Here she was developing these class of drugs called inotropes, which were geared towards patients with congestive heart failure to make the heart muscle itself contract stronger. And this was really pivotal work, and she devoted her life to it. She would go to work at 6:30 in the morning, come home 10, 11 o'clock at night, and she gave her life to this mission of hers to create this class of drugs, and ideally create an oral version of this that patients with congestive heart failure could receive. Lo and behold, in the early 1980s, in fact, 1984, Millerone, or the oral form of it, her drug, was granted FDA approval. And this was such an amazing feat. I can remember as if it was yesterday, sitting around the TV and watching the world news, and they announced it. It was one of the lead stories that this drug was given FDA approval. And not surprisingly, with FDA approval, this small pharmaceutical company and its value and its stock shot up. In fact, within a few years of FDA approval of this drug, the company was acquired by Eastman Kodak, who wanted to expand into the pharmaceutical business and expand in the cardiac drug development. Now, unfortunately, not uncommonly in research, what initially appeared very promising for this oral inotrope didn't bear out. In fact, there was a pivotal study called the PROMISE study that went on to show that while this drug, as a proof of concept, increased the muscle strength and the contractibility, there was increased risk of sudden cardiac death. Some people likened it to kicking a dead horse. And the oral form of the drug was taken off the market. But the IV form that she created goes on to this day and is used quite commonly in patients as a bridge therapy while they're awaiting cardiac transplant, and goes on to help patients today. Now, Adawia, after giving 25 years of her life to this research, getting up at 6:30 in the morning, going to work, and coming home at 11 o'clock at night, she saw that, after 25 years, she wanted to begin to enjoy life and take some step back. So she told now Eastman Kodak that she wanted to retire, and they said, no, you can't retire. You are really gifted. You're too young. What can we do to keep you from leaving? And so they wanted her to move where their headquarters were in Philadelphia. And Adawia said, no, that's not what she wanted to do. She wanted, for her to stay, she would need to take her lab, and she wanted to go and be on the West Coast in California, where her nieces and nephews from her late sister, who happened to die a spontaneous cardiac death, she wanted to be closer to them. And she wanted to move her lab to California, and they said, sure. So she said, well, I would like to stay and collect a full salary. I will like to take all my grants. And she went and moved her lab to the Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla, California, where she would continue to work for additional 5 years and continue her cardiac research. After that, she said, you know, I really want to be in Carmel, where my nieces and nephews reside, and I want to be closer to family, and I want to retire. And they said, no, you have more to give. You're not ready for retirement. Find a lab in Carmel to do research. And so if anybody's visited Carmel, there's not a lot of labs there, but there is one. There's a Hopkins Marine Station at Stanford University, and amazingly, she found a researcher who was studying starfish, and she would apply her expertise in sodium-potassium channels and calcium-induced cellular functions, which were acquired through years of human cardiac research, to understanding these preserved systems in invertebrate species. And so, you know, this lab never saw the likes of someone like Adawia, someone who is used to getting up bright at the crack of dawn, coming in and staying and working all day. And if you know about people who study marine biology, they're incredibly smart and passionate, but they love their time at the beach, and they didn't know quite what to make of her. But she enjoyed her interaction so much with these scientists studying starfish. She went on to continue her research for additional few years. I think it's important to know that Dr. Alousi was a leader in the era when very few women were recognized for their accomplishments, let alone a foreign-born Arab woman. While she devoted her life to research, seeing her life as one-dimensional would miss the true beauty in which she lived her life. She was a second mother to her 15 nieces and nephews, and second grandmother to their children, always generous in her time and money, and to ensure they were able to pursue their life's passions. She loved to travel and was often accompanied on these journeys with her sisters in science, lifelong friends she met while studying at SUNY and Harvard. Other times she would take her nieces and instill in them the excitement of meeting new people, cultures, and arts. Her travels took her throughout the world, including to the Middle East and her never forgotten home, Baghdad, Iraq, including trips to Mecca. She supported local artists and arts and music in the community she resided. She loved music, especially classical and opera, as well as the French singer Edith Piaf. And she was an avid collector of art, and the walls of her home was adorned with her favorite Native American, Japanese, African artists, along with modern works of Miro. While she was at Winthrop, she built a home on the outskirts of Albany, New York, and she would often spend her time when she wasn't in the lab tending to her garden, chopping down her own firewood, or taking long hikes in the woods. She loved to entertain and was a wonderful cook, often making elaborate French and Arabic meals. From the last couple of moments, I want to say that I hope I've given you a flavor for who Adawia Alousi was. And while the scholars may not have or have not never have met her, Adawia lives within you guys. We have recognized in each one of the scholars and previous scholar recipients a piece of Adawia, and for that you are recognized with your scholarship. But Adawia also lives on through you, and with that comes a responsibility. And our wish for the Adawia Alousi scholars are that they be curious, that they be passionate, that they be driven and hardworking, that they be vocal and speak up for injustices, and they develop lifelong friends. I would ask each one of the scholars today to identify another recipient or previous recipient, introduce themselves, and build that sisterhood of friendship that was so important to Adawia and her life. Finally, for this scholarship to live on, someday when you guys go on to do great things, we hope that you will support the scholarship, and so that it'll be around for your daughters and your daughters' daughters, and her legacy will continue. With that, I will give it back to Michaela.
All right. Thank you so much, Amin. That was really inspiring. I am thrilled and just, yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so next up, I would like to introduce you all to Elise Elusi, who is an acclaimed poet and educator, fund advisor, and niece of Dr. Alousi. She is going to be welcoming our special guest speaker today and lead us through a discussion. So Elise, I'll hand it over to you next.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there for a moment. Thank you so much to Amin for that beautiful presentation. Thank you to everyone at CAAP for all your support of this scholarship. We wouldn't be able to do the amazing things we've done over the past few years without it. As Michaela said, my name is Elise Elusi, and today it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our very special guest speaker, Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha. Dr. Hanna-Attisha is a distinguished public health advocate, scientist, pediatrician, and professor who made history uncovering the Flint water crisis. She is the author of the bestseller, What the Eyes Don't See, a story of crisis, resistance, and hope in an American city. And she'll be telling us today about her unique journey into the field of STEM and offering some advice to our amazing scholars as you continue excelling as women leaders in STEM. So thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Attisha. We know how busy you are. And we're going to just jump right in with our questions. And the first one is that we'd love to hear a little bit as an Arab American woman whose journey and accomplishments inspire so many of us here today. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what inspired or led you on your journey in the field of science and medicine.
Thank you, Elise, and thank you for inviting me to this amazing event. Amin, your story about your aunt was so moving and drawed so many parallels really to my life and to my family history. I think you forgot the most important thing in my intro. So also an Iraqi American woman.
Yes.
Proud of that background, really have been so reflective. I wrote, my book is very much a memoir, which kind of chronicles like how I got to be where I am and what my inspirations were, which kind of, as it gets to your question. And I stand on the shoulder of giants, and your aunt was one of those giants. Like, obviously I didn't have a chance to meet her, but she was one of those many trailblazers that paved a path for me and so many other immigrant Arab American girls to go into science, to be curious, to be loud, to ask questions, and ultimately to serve their communities. So I am grateful for her legacy, because without her legacy and so many other amazing women like her, I wouldn't be able to do what I have been able to do and continue to have the privilege of doing. So thank you for sharing her story, and thank you for creating the scholarship and really guaranteeing that we continue to have future generations of folks who live those ideals. So my path kind of to medicine and science was very similar to hers. So I grew up in a family where, in this immigrant family where science was kind of the religion of our family. My mom was a chemist. She went to Baghdad University. She was one of only 2 women in her class. And she, her mom in Baghdad was a teacher, and she came from a family where no matter what your gender, education was important, as well as the sciences. Other folks in our extended family, like great uncles, had gone to school at, for example, at AUB in Beirut, and had really kind of instilled in our family the importance of education and really the sciences. My dad was a metallurgical engineer, now retired, worked for General Motors, which is really everybody in the Metro Detroit area or Michigan has a connection to the auto industry. And I grew up where I had to know the periodic table and the multiplication table. So science was how I was raised, but also using science for the betterment of society. So as an immigrant, as this kind of brown girl who wasn't really supposed to be in this country, came here when I was 4, the world, the way I see the world, just like probably so many of you, is of being every day grateful to be in this country, because like many immigrants, we were leaving somewhere bad, the oppression and the tyranny of the regime of Saddam Hussein, and we were coming here for that kind of aspirational American dream. So grew up very grateful to be here, but also grew up with what I consider a superpower of being an immigrant, of having this almost heightened antenna for injustice. And my parents instilled in me that through science and through service, that you have this amazing opportunity, to do good in your communities, no matter how hard that work may be. And that was kind of how I ended up in science, how I ended up in medicine and in pediatrics, and how I ended up in a place like Flint, a very impoverished place serving a very underserved community, where one of the greatest and most emblematic injustices happened with our water crisis. But because of my background, because of that history imbued in me as a scientist and as an immigrant and as an Arab American woman, with those ideals of and that foundation of being curious and loud and stubborn and persistent, that I was able to uncover our water crisis and ultimately lead its recovery. So I have never forgotten, and that was why kind of my book and my story is so much also this immigrant book of kind of how important and how that perspective of being an immigrant, especially an Arab American immigrant, is to countering so many of the stereotypes that we more commonly are familiar with.
Oh, thank you so much. That was beautiful, and I so appreciated hearing your background, and the parallels are just beautiful, and particularly what you say about a life of science and a life of service. That is just really resonates with me. I wondered if you might also talk a little bit about a particular challenge that you encountered along your path, or an opportunity, an unexpected opportunity that kind of led you in a different direction. So just anything that might inspire the young women who are here today.
Yeah, so I guess I'll share like my most kind of public obstacle. So, when I, as a pediatrician practicing in Flint with a kind of a public health background, became aware of kind of the water crisis in Flint, where lead, which is a poison, was coming out of our pipes and it was coming into our water, and our kids were drinking it. And if you know anything about lead, it like can totally alter the trajectory of a child's development and their future. So I quickly did the research, I quickly did the science to see what was happening to our kids, if they were actually getting more lead in their bodies, and yes, they were. And then I did something which most like doctors and academics and scientists don't do. Like you saw pictures of like journals, like that's where we share research. When we have come up with something in the scientific world, we share our research in publications and presentations, and that's what we're supposed to do as academics. But that process can take time. Like getting something published and going through that really important peer review process takes time. And I knew that our kids in Flint didn't have that time. So I did something totally like that I wasn't supposed to do. And one of my favorite accolades that I have received in this kind of in this period has been an award from MIT called the Disobedience Award. It was their first ever Disobedience Award for being academically disobedient by sharing research before it had gone through this kind of traditional peer review process. And I love that award, but it was very difficult to explain to my children that I got a Disobedience Award. They're like, Mom, why should I do my homework? I'm like, oh, no, don't listen to that. I felt it was really important to share the science. So, I went public at a press conference and I shared the science, which once again, wasn't what you're supposed to do. And I felt so good after I did that. I'm like, yay, like I'm just sharing numbers and statistics and p-values and science. And how could anybody think like there was something wrong with that? This is just numbers and facts. I'm just sharing facts. And I shouldn't have been surprised, but the obstacle that I then encountered was that my science was attacked. My reputation was attacked. Me as a scientist, me as a woman was attacked. I was called hysterical, which has been thrown against so many women scientists over time as well. So that was one of the biggest obstacles that I have faced in my career, where I was sharing science to protect my patients, to kind of raise alarm bells at this kind of injustice that was happening, and to have that science be attacked. So, you know, the short part of the story is that ultimately the science spoke truth to power. The science was acknowledged, but it took a while. So to be a woman as a scientist, to be loud and stubborn and to speak truth to power is not always easy. It's hard. It was physically hard. It was emotionally hard. It was mentally hard. For a moment, I felt like tiny, like I felt defeated. I began to second guess myself. I developed what so many women develop, often the sense of imposter syndrome, like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't have spoken up. And to be a brown immigrant woman, no less, like barely 5 feet tall, to be going against some of the most powerful forces in the state and the nation. And fortunately, once again, I was able to persist and overcome that obstacle because of who I am and where I came from, because of that strong family history of social justice, because of those values that were instilled in me as a kid, that you do the right thing no matter how hard it is. And I'm going to share one quick story of how kind of that family history of being an Arab American kind of, recognizing that family history could have predicted my actions. One of my favorite kind of family stories is about one of my great uncles, Nuri, who in the 1930s came to MIT to study, and then he got kicked out because he became like this activist during the Great Depression. He came back to Iraq, where he created a group called the Association Against Imperialism and Fascism. Like, I think I would join that group now. And he was always fighting like one cause or the other. He went to Palestine to fight for its independence against British rule. And then in the 1930s, he found his way as one of 2 Iraqis. He went from Baghdad to Spain to fight in the Spanish Civil War against Franco and fascists. And he had all these fake names. His fake name was Anwar, and like it's an amazing story. And these are the stories I heard when I was a kid about, you know, what it means. Like, you know, it wasn't about race, and it wasn't about religion, it wasn't about country, but it was about doing the right thing no matter how hard it was, no matter the risks that needed to be taken. So that's, you know, it's important to understand that part of me, and that's your history too. That's all of our histories. And how that shapes who we are, and how we are able to contribute so much to our communities that we serve.
Oh, gosh, I just have chills listening to you and hearing a bit more about your family history, but also thinking about like how different history would be if you hadn't been vocal, if you hadn't given yourself that charge to say, I'm not going to stop telling this story. As somebody who lives in Michigan, I am just deeply grateful to you and to your voice, because you changed the lives of so many people and families here in Michigan, and we're so indebted to you for that. One final request, I think, is just for you, and I think you've already done this many times over, but if there's one piece of advice that you have for our scholars today who are working across all spectrums of the STEM fields, in terms of how they might continue to break barriers and excel. So many of them are doing amazing work. What's a piece of advice that you can leave them with today?
Oh, it's hard to give one. Like, I've had goosebumps this entire session because I am so inspired. You guys inspire me, and so do so many young people all over. You give me faith in tomorrow, and that tomorrow is going to be so much brighter than today, and that you'll be able to kind of tackle some of the problems that we're leaving you. So, you know, I would give you like 3 maybe bits of advice, and I call them my 3 Ps. So find your passion, like what keeps you up at night? What do you love doing? I pinch myself every morning that I get to work with kids and do public health research and advocacy. Like, I love my job. Like, being like, if I'm not working, I'm not well. Like, I love what I do. So find your passion. because then it doesn't feel like work. Find your peeps, which are your people. And we heard about your aunt and her peeps. So find your friends, find your team, especially as women. You need a village. We need a village to get through our work and our careers. I have a village at home and a village at work because it is hard. There's no such thing as balance. I can't do what I do without layers of support in both realms of my life. So find your passion, find your peeps, and be persistent. I think we've heard that already. So don't give up in what you believe in and what you're seeking to accomplish.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for making time to be here with us today. And thank you so much for your kind words. I hope you'll continue to follow the Scholarship Fund and the amazing young women who we're privileged to have with us here today. Thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me, and congrats to all the scholars. I can't wait to hear about your futures.
All right. Thank you so much, Mona, Elise, for such a beautiful discussion. So now we are going really quick before we jump into our breakout rooms. We're going to be showing you a special Alousi Scholars video that we put together with the current scholars here with us today. Thank you to the scholars for helping us and submitting your video. We hope you enjoy it.
My name is Barat Nawash, and I'm an aspiring doctor.
Hanina Ali, and I am an aspiring doctor.
Hiba Shaban, and I'm an aspiring doctor.
Tada Maruf, and I am an aspiring engineer.
Marwa Harp, and I am an aspiring doctor.
Misbah Sheikh, and I'm an aspiring physician.
Isra Muhammad, and I'm an aspiring doctor.
And we are the Alousi Scholars.
Dr. Elusi paved the way for future Arab and Muslim women in the STEM field.
It is support,
like the Dr. Adawia Alousi STEM Scholarship for Muslim women,
that uplifts women as they become doctors,
engineers,
scientists,
researchers,
and leaders.
In a time when self-appointed experts
attempt to define the face of the modern Muslim woman
who can speak about their lives, careers, and choices with true authority.
I'm proud
to be joining this powerful sisterhood
of thought leaders
and innovators.
We are simultaneously breaking stereotypes and finding solutions for our modern world. My future goal is to work in sustainable energy, and this scholarship has helped me not have to compromise on my learning and education.
In the future, I would love helping the next generation of Muslim females lead innovative research in the STEM fields.
My future goal is to become a physician that cultivates a productive and welcoming environment for not only my patients, but other women interested in science as well.
Being a Muslim woman in STEM to me means making space for myself and my sisters where there usually isn't one.
My future goals are to finish my undergraduate studies in neuroscience and to go on to medical school to become an OBGYN and help underrepresented women get the care and help they need.
We are the researchers, healthcare workers, engineers, mathematicians, scientists, and programmers of tomorrow. We too are striving to create a legacy as givers.
Because at the end of the day, although you can have all this information and you can be very well educated, it's about what you do with that education and who you inspire.
Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and thank you again to the scholars. I love watching that. It gave me chills again, as well as Mona and Hanna-Attisha's speech. So we are definitely excited to spend the rest of this event in breakout rooms so you can continue to build community with this incredible group. So we'll be putting these instructions in the chat. But once you get into your breakout rooms, please begin by introducing yourself and tell each other a little bit about your background, like, of course, your name, the state you live in, the major or the field that you are in, as well as what school you attend or what you do. Next, we have 2 discussion questions that we'd like you to discuss. The first one is, what are some of your future goals in STEM? And the second one, again, is for those of you in the group who have been in the field for some time. What advice would you give to the scholars that you'd wish you'd known when you were in their shoes? So we're a little over time, so we have about a little less than 15 minutes to meet for discussion, and then we would like to elect one person in your group to share out at the end any takeaways connections you made with the group, or something interesting that you learned about one another. So please bear with us while we launch the breakout rooms. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had good discussion. We didn't have as much time as we had hoped, but we'll definitely have more chances to connect like this. So just really quickly, I wanted to see if there was any notable takeaways or connections you made, or just any advice that you learned from the groups. So if group one, I don't know if you remember your groups that you were in, but if group one would like to share a little bit more to the group about what you talked about. Let's see who's in group one.
We're group one, Michaela.
All right, I think, yeah, Ramsey's gonna be the elect.
By random selection, I was selected, or either I was outnumbered by amazing women. So my name is Ramsey Al-Jami, and fortunate to be here. Group one consisted of Hiba, and please, I'm sorry if I'm butchering anyone's name. I apologize. Hiba, Salma, Tasifa, Marwa, and Malika. And then I, of course. Fun fact is all the young ladies that are received the scholarship are actually all living in different states, and they have amazingly different specializations within their fields. And one of them is actually finishing up their PhD, which is, oh my God, phenomenal. And one last thing is, I wish my 15-year-old daughter can be just like these young ladies. I mean, phenomenal representation of, I mean, I'm just so impressed, honestly. So high level, very impressed with these young ladies, big fans, different states and amazingly different specialties that are really going for mega advanced degrees.
Thank you so much, Ramsey, and thank you for being, a male advocate for these women. Could we have group two share?
We had 4 wonderful scholars in our group. Loved hearing about each one of them, from medical students to engineering students to one recipient who's passionate about studying the intersect between celiac disease and mental health, and hearing how she came upon that passion so early in her studies. At the same time, there were other students who were just trying to find what their passion was, and they spoke to how hard it is, often, especially within the engineering field, to be the only woman, the only Muslim woman, only Arab woman at the table, and how it can be scary, yet at the same time, sometimes empowering. And so I loved hearing from them, and I'm confident the 4 women in my group are going to carry their discussions and build that sisterhood that was so supporting of my aunt and her journey. And I feel confident they're going to take that forward and carrying on their discussions beyond that 15 minutes we got to sit and discuss with each other.
Thanks, Amin. All right, let's go with group 3.
Is Haneen still here? I think we nominated Haneen.
Oh yes, that was me. Sorry, I didn't realize you were group 3. I was only Alousi Scholar in the group, so I got to know a lot of great professionals in the group. We basically just spoke about how we talked about me a lot, so that was a little weird because I don't like to talk about myself that much. But it was nice to see that Mr. Riyad was talking. It mentioned his daughter and how she's aspiring and going through this process herself. So it's also nice. It's nice to see how people started off as like pre-meds and now are in medical school. But there was that point in our lives where we thought we'd never get to this point. So it's a good reminder that things are temporary and eventually we all can accomplish our goals, especially with people behind us like all of you pushing us and propelling us forward.
Thanks, Haneen. I really appreciate your words, and thank you also for submitting a video. I feel like you should be a speaker because you have so good things to say. All right, our last group, group 4.
Hi, I'm the nominee for group 4. I'm Brittany Shaheen and I work for CAAP. So we had in our group an almost even breakdown of kind of like advisors and people that have experience in the field and recipients. And we had a decent variety. We had someone that was going in to be an OBGYN and people in neuroscience. And then we actually had kind of a different areas. We had somebody from Pittsburgh, somebody from Texas. So we kind of got some perspectives from different places, different people. And as far as advisement, we had Bilal and Sonia, and they gave some great points. Sonia was very inspirational of being like, you can do, the sky's the limit. She told us about what her mom would say to her. And then Bilal was talking about making different types of connections and kind of like working and getting your own group, kind of like what Dr. Mona said, make your own village. And it was great to really get to know everybody. And I think it is really good for everybody to talk to one another.
Thanks, Brittany. Well, that wraps up our event for today. We're really excited that you guys joined us and hope you enjoyed this event. Looking ahead, this was sort of a kickoff event to more. We're really excited to be offering you guys more events and activities for you to interact. I know that 10 minutes seemed so short, and so yeah, we're really excited to have more events like these so you guys can continue connecting with each other, finding mentors and strengthening this great collective that we have. But in the meantime, we are vamping up our Alousi Scholars Facebook group and boosting interaction there. So if you haven't already joined the Facebook group, please do so by clicking on the link in the chat. So yeah, I hope to see you guys at some point in the future in person once it's safe to do so. I wish you all luck as you continue in your journey. Thank you so much for coming, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you
See you,
so
everyone.
much.
We're so proud of you all.